Welcome to the One Within All to another episode of the InnerVerse podcast. I'm your host, Chance, coming at you from a freshly sprung Southwest Missouri. And I've been looking forward to this particular mind meld for many weeks, as today's guest is an extraordinarily eclectic generalist who's generating exciting solutions across a huge spectrum of our collective human condition. He's definitely an alpha being with a disciplined warrior's approach to the art of rethinking our society from the bottom up, and we've got a lot of possible topics on the table today. If you don't already know him, Mike Winner is about to win you over big time with his enthusiastic and knowledgeable vibe. But as the host of the legendary Alfa Cast with Dr. Barre Lando, you've probably already been inspired by Mike quite a few times. So subjects on the table today may include, but are not limited to, nutrition, the products over at the Alfa Vedic store and their strategic biodynamic cultivation practices, the magic of water, cryptocurrency and the newly birthed Qortal network, general cosmological Q&A, terrain and germ theory clarifications, the online knowledge summit known as the event, and one of the most exciting things Mike has helped create and birth into the world, the Music and Sky Festival in California. But again, this is two podcast hosts getting together to shoot the breeze, so you have no idea what might actually come out of this. Those are just some things that I know that Mike's into. There's so much to dig into. So with this one, I'm, like I said, super excited. Talking fast because I want to maximize our time. And although I've only hinted at a fraction of the Mike Winner Gnosis fractal, we got to get this show going so we can give him as much room as possible to blow our minds. You can find his stuff at alfavedic.com. Alpha is spelled A-L-F-A, Vedic, V-E-D-I-C.com. There's so much he's involved with, though. I don't think that I even really scratched the surface. So thanks for being here, Mike. Let's just get this thing rolling. Welcome to the InnerVerse.
Oh, man. Thanks, Jan. Such a pleasure to be here with you. I've been loving your podcast and everything you've been up to of late. Really, like one of my favorite shows now to listen to. Your vibrant and, of course, your late night, explorations into art and the esoteric with the Weaving Spiders stream. Man, you guys are really, really pushing the level of content, and I really appreciate what you guys are doing.
Hey, I could say the same about you. I mean, for as deep as we go and as hard as we hit the synchromistic gravy trains, you guys have got the health, the cosmology, the health. I mean, health is really like its own cosmology. So I don't know where I want to start, but one question that kept popping up into my mind that is a really good place to go to for anybody that's got an awesome and energetic flow state full time is, tell us a little bit about your nutrition and supplementation game. That's an ever evolving thing, but where are you at right now? What is your mindset? What is your strategy? Let's get into that.
My strategy has gone completely minimalism. I feel like we complicate things so much with the need to have material gratification through supplementation. And I feel like that can get us into hot water. And so I'm really becoming more and more minimalist in what I'm doing in terms of what I put in my body, and understanding that consciousness is more important than the things that we put in us. So having a conscious connection to every little thing I put into through my mouth or on my skin or that I engage with in any aspect of the physical. So, it's funny because Alfa Vedic, what do we sell? We sell products that are for your health. Now, most of those products we wouldn't call supplements, if any of them. We call them, a lot of them are derived. That being said, yeah, it's a tricky question, right? Because people want the solution. Like, what can I have now? We've been trained with that ideology through allopathic medicine and through the state of the world today, where there's a solution at our fingertips, thanks to, the Google-ons of the world. And I think it's important right now for us to simplify and get more minimal with our approach to our health, because really we have an inherent 0-point machine of consciousness that we are lucky enough to, come into when we come onto this plane. And we should really embrace the power of that by not getting in its way. However, we are dealing with a toxic environment, right? We have what some would call archons, or some would call, dark dark energy, or what Edgar Casey would call the sons of Belial, Belial from the Atlantis days, who are messing with the realm for their own nefarious means because they have the inability to create. So because of that, we look up in the sky and we see these weird planes way up there putting stuff that's poison in the sky. We look at our food. It's not even real food for the most part if you go into a grocery store anymore. So we're dealing with a lot of toxicity. So yeah, my main focus is usually detoxing. And I know, Chance, you've been doing some detox protocols I'd love to hear about as well. So on the daily, I try to stay minimal. I can go over my morning routine if you like. I'm trying to get up earlier and earlier so that I can catch those early sun rays, which are very healthy. It's kind of like the farmer's diet, without the classical diet in terms of what farmers eat, but in terms of the diet of the early sun. Farmers are extremely healthy and long living because they get that early sun. So to get up early and do some sun gazing, I'm trying to do more and more while I'm doing my yoga and qigong. And it's really that energetic, the movement is my breakfast. So I don't actually eat breakfast. I do a little tonic in the morning with some Smith River vortex structured water with a little bit of organic lemon juice that I try to grow here, even though it's kind of hard to grow citrus here. I grow Meyer lemons, which aren't as ideal. So I do purchase organic lemons, and then I do our 0 point full spectrum liquids, which are essentially like a liquid Shilajit. If you're familiar with that, it's a fulvic humic base of minerals that come from a very pristine location, actually in the United States. And that is just over thousands of years, natural derived pure mineral source that is, done through Mother Nature. It's not done in a lab. And that is embedded with transitional elements, or what traditionally are called orbitally rearranged monatomic elements. However, we like to call them transitional elements because we don't buy so much into the particle methodology or scientism that comes with ORM or ORMUS. But essentially, those are elements that are in a transitional phase that are more that are less metallic and dense and more ceramic almost, and vibrating in a transitional mode between the transmutation of the elements. So all that means is they're more easily able to embed into your cellular matrix, I guess you could say. And so, yeah, that's my breakfast: sun, movement, and pure water with a little bit of lemon juice and a little bit of maple syrup sometimes. And some cayenne maybe thrown in. And that gets me going for most of the day. And then I may have a kale shake if I'm really doing heavy stuff during the day, working a lot outside, or something light during the day. And then I just do a meal at night, typically a salad and some protein. So I'm, I guess, classically called a 1 meal a day guy, which I got from Dr. Barre Lando. And so for me, I'm trying to reduce sustenance more and more and go more breatharian, if you will. Yeah. Awesome. So anyways, and I also do like the C60. I know that can be controversial. I did come down with the for the first time in like 20 years, man. And that's actually, I was going to be on this podcast a few months ago, and I came down with whatever you want to call it, the Cinco hay poisoning, you have some good names for it. Some would say they caught the cooties. What's that?
The coof.
Yeah, the coof. It was weird. It was anomalous. It hit me hard.
It happened to me a little before you too. I'm glad we're getting into this. It's actually feels like appropriate that we got to have this conversation after that, because it will help us talk about some of the alternative cosmological aspects of our life fractal, of our body as a reflection of the universe. And this idea of germ theory is really something we haven't explored on the show enough compared to maybe some other podcasts out there, and what alternative ways of looking at it might entail. What comes to mind at this moment is this idea of, a hostile external universe that's just looking to infect you with things to kill you all the time. If we applied that to the life fractal, that also gives us sort of a reason, unconsciously or subconsciously, to believe in a hostile, archonic universe this sort of pop culture Gnostic belief system that, we're in a matrix, that nature is a prison and that our bodies are lower and base and somehow evil and we're being punished by being here. All of this like really life negating as opposed to life affirming belief system also connects in a reflective way to the germ theory model as presented by science and to many other models presented by science. So, let's get into that. Your experience, did it change
it's all
your
scientism, man? Look at the second law of thermodynamics of entropy. They try to say that the universe is naturally inclined to go into chaos and to destroy itself, which makes no sense to me. And in the first law of thermodynamics, the conservation of energy, that would entail that we're in a closed system. And however, they'd like to say we're in an ever expanding infinite system. So it's all nonsense to me. And scientism is what I call scientism, or what traditionally is known as science today, is a religion of our time. And it is based on pure materialism, reductionalist materialism. And a major aspect of that, of course, is the germ theory that came out of the late 19th century from, of course, which later became Rockefellerian Rockefeller medicine, but and we've detailed this a lot on Alfa Cast. We've done 2-part series on Béchamp versus Pasteur. Louis Pasteur, of course, is known as the father of germ theory, who essentially was extremely jealous, more of a politician in a way, a person, not really a real scientist, and was extremely jealous of Antoine Béchamp, who was a real scientist who had developed really fascinating theories and proven them scientifically about the nature of our anatomy and microbiology, and where essentially all of this derives from in terms of the natural cycles of our inner milieu of bacteria, of what he would call virions, which aren't viruses, but these are just different aspects of the microbiology within our body. And of course, what he came up with this idea is that there is an inner terrain that is affected by a lot of different aspects. It's not just one singular microorganism coming into us that makes us sick. There is a very complex system within us, just like as above, so below, just as in the terrain of our planet, the terrain of our solar system, etc. It's all related, but it's a very dynamic system, and it's relating to our psychology, to our emotions, to our spirituality, and of course that doesn't play into reductionist materialism. So here comes Pasteur to bastardize what he developed and explored into the germ theory, which essentially just connected one singular type of microbe to a specific symptomology of disease. And of course, that plays in heavily into where we are now with what I call Rockefeller science or Rockefeller medicine, which is connecting that symptomology to a specific petrochemically derived medicine to fix it. And of course, as you astutely said, that is all connected to this idea of a war against microbes, or a war against disease, which is, of course, the model that they love, because they love pushing war. That fits right into entropy, that fits into the materialism, that fits into the negative aspects of the reality they want us to see versus the love aspect, right? The idea we're all holistically connected, we're all one consciousness. It's all about infinite closed system of reincarnation and all those wonderful things that we love to talk about. So yeah, the germ theory is an extremely important weapon, to use their own analogy, for battling upon humanity. And it's great because we're seeing it finally unravel in front of our eyes, thanks to the recent scamdemic, because they weren't able to keep all of their narratives were so ridiculously intertwined into nonsense, and they just didn't work out for pure logical sense, right? That a lot of people started questioning, like, why would be, if there is a virus that is so contagious, why am I able to get Amazon boxes delivered to my house? I'm not allowed to go shop, but these Amazon boxes are coming to my house in this dirty cardboard that is being stored in these warehouses now. Are these warehouses going through protocols to make sure that this dirty cardboard doesn't have this virus on it? Of course not. Or that Walmarts and Costco's are open, but the small mom and pops have to close. I mean, all of this stuff, right, started really forcing people to start logically looking at germ theory in a much new way. And I think it's been a massive win for logic and for humanity, thanks to this system getting desperate and trying to push the recent scamdemic so hard.
Lots there. So I have like an observation to maybe connect it back to your minimalist nutrition mentality, because I've oscillated back and forth into belief of I need this or I don't need it anymore. And so that consciousness component of our physical form being the most important thing, belief is a really powerful tool. So I think that the belief of the external germ, single microbe boogeyman could be part of what helps people get sick. Like I do a lot of work with people's energy fields and the bio field, if you will, which is an electric plasma sheath around the body. And I think that it could be that some aspect of illness, this isn't entirely different than the belief in a germ, if you will, except that the germ exists as an idea as opposed to a physical microbe. That I think that some aspect of what makes people ill that's maybe in a sense transmittable is a vibe that people can sort of inject into one another, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. And that's how this whole thing worked out, I believe, is it plays into the psychological, or really the psi effects of human consciousness on our anatomy. And that is everything. That is everything we're talking about. I mean, look at the derivation of the word germ, to germinate, to create. That's literally means to create life, right? They invert everything.
Who did they make the bad guys in the 20th century in 2 world wars?
The Germans. That's a great point, dude. Wow, I didn't even think of that. That's
the psyop fantastic. Is replete and interconnected, but it took until the internet age and the reawakening of the green language or the twilight speak to be able to connect those dots that are actually super obvious now.
Wow. Yeah, that is really interesting. So, but to go back to your idea of the psychological connection to disease, I mean, that is everything. New Germanic medicine with Dr. Hammer went deep into that and proved that through thousands of CAT scans, that literally we are a biocomputer that we initially, our higher consciousness fell into. That it was the fall. And we can touch on this a little later, going into maybe Edgar Cayce's work on Atlantis and previous, and to how we literally incarnated pre-Adam, the pre-Adamite human form before, the Garden of Eden even, was the fall, was not a moral calamity. It was literally our first experiences into materiality. From I really love the law of one, and this idea that we're all singular consciousness that now is experiencing itself through this materiality. And so that relates to everything this biocomputer does. It all relates to our belief system. Our belief system is everything, I personally believe. So that's why we've explored subjects like breatharianism and even the notion that there's great masters that can levitate and we can have all these abilities. And I believe we're moving towards that again. We really are the greatest technology. And the system itself, so you mentioned this notion of pop culture Gnosticism, right? This idea of the archons or the grays, and it's very popular in ufology and everything. And I think that is really fun. I think that's really fun to go into. And some people go, fun? That's freaking crazy. You say that's fun. That's scary.
No, it's fun.
It's
fun if you're not easily ruffled or scared, if you don't worry about boogeyman, because you do have that innate knowing that all life force energy is one and all consciousness is one, then whatever archonic thing is out there, if that exists or just is conceptual, it must and has to be a part of what we are in our most supreme innermost being.
Exactly. Exactly. This is all just higher consciousness exploring materiality and different levels of materiality. And so it gets rich. It gets rich in detail. But also, I think we overcomplicate everything. I really do. I think it's actually pretty simple. And I think the system is derived too. When I say the system, like the system of control, those who have gone so deep into materiality that they've lost their connection, right? And they've lost their connection to be able to create. They've kind of given away their original source connection. And those ones, they can still, like Billy Gates of Hell, he could still reconnect, I believe, to the higher source. Like there's no one here that is on this planet, whether you believe in NPCs or not. And that's an interesting topic I'd love to get into as well. The whole notion of NPCs and related to the simulation and all that stuff. But I believe that we all still have that tether to source, no matter how dark of a path we go, and that's why we reincarnate and we can level up or level down. So we like to always create mythology around what we don't understand. And I think that's fun. I think that allows us to really explore our consciousness and explore this reality, but also we have to be able to step back and understand that it's just mythology. That's our innate misunderstanding of this tether to our higher consciousness, or this reaching for it through creating narrative. And, so I think the minimalism concept is really important because it allows us to have a reframing every morning, for instance, through specific ritual that is minimal to get reconnected to source, like sun gazing, like breath work, simple stuff that allows us to retap into who we really are and not get so lost into the minutia, the complexity that our mind, body, machine here likes to create out of its misunderstanding of its own materiality, if that makes sense.
Yeah. All of our problems are self-inflicted and the solutions existed before the problems. Gosh,
exactly.
Dude, where to go from there? Because I have a lot of thoughts rushing around in my head. But I want to talk about, I guess, this idea of reincarnation, because I had a sort of insight about this yesterday that was big. I was studying into the gene keys in conjunction with the I Ching, because I'm a big I Ching guy. I do that for clients, like oracle readings, and gene keys is a great way to flesh out a deeper insight to each of the I Ching hexagrams. And I was looking at the 22nd hexagram, which is often represented as grace, or a lotus blooming out of the muddy water. And in this gene keys breakdown, they were talking about the possibility that our karma is actually completely wiped clean at the end of each lifetime, that there isn't really a consequential reincarnation in the sense of you get punished, like you lived a shitty life in a previous life, you were a bad guy, so now you're going to get made into a peasant or a slave. And it wasn't exactly explained this way in the Gene Keys book, but I was like, this makes perfect sense, because it's just an Eastern version of the very same, like, heaven or hell, punishment or redemption mythology of the Messiah matrix that we're all caught up in, that we must sacrifice ourselves for the collective because that's what the best guy did. Our ultimate hero let the collective kill him. Whenever you put two brain cells together, you realize actually we all need to take care of ourselves instead of sacrificing ourselves to the collective, which is what the collective always pushes us to do. Join the Borg, assimilate. Because if we were all really radically healthy and taking care of ourselves, then we could easily help out the few people that weren't making it, as opposed to everybody being self-sacrificed. So that's a lot there. But
simple, like the plane's going down, you put the oxygen on yourself first so you can take care of everybody else,
Exactly. Perfect metaphor. So with this,
I have some issues with that though. And with the idea. So because what's the biggest question that any Christian asks, or anyone who is a God believing person, is why does God allow bad things to happen to good people? Right. And so I see this all the time as a volunteer firefighter, like tragedy. Recently, last summer, there was a family, and I don't know their history. I don't know who they are. It's from what I've gathered posthumously that they were a decent, wonderful family of, I think it was 5 or 6 young kids, 3 or 4 young kids and a young couple driving through the redwoods. And the most random thing, it reminds me almost of that movie Signs by M. Night Shyamalan, where a redwood tree just randomly fell perfectly. And like the chances of this happening is you have almost a greater chance to win the lotto or something. In the middle of the summer, with no weather, a tree randomly falls and perfectly lands on them and kills them all. And, you see that kind of that happen, and it wasn't like they were serial killers or Manson's running on the run or something. And you wonder, like, why? If there is a God and we live in this divine realm, which I believe we do, of connected consciousness, why does that happen to those folks? And so an obvious explanation for me is that, well, one, first of all, we don't know what they're doing in their life, right? We don't know what their soul contract is, what they signed up for, what their relationships are, et cetera. But also we don't know what they've done in their previous lives and whether this was karmically charged incident for them. So for me, sometimes that helps me, right, to understand that, like, we do have specific ramifications in our live stream based upon what we've done in the past live streams. And Edgar Cayce does talk about that a lot. And we can go into that a bit, because I love Edgar Cayce just because on the health side, like, he had so many of his readings proven due to the literal benefits. I think he had like 85 or 90% of his health readings, help the patient in some profound way. So to me, that really is a empirically charged or empirically proven evidence for what he was tapping into, that Akashic record or higher source or whatever. So anyways, going back to this, it's like what you're talking about, the gene codes that we just reset it. We could be Bill Gates terrorizing the world and then just reset at the end and come back and have a go at it again. What we call the no consequences crowd believes in some respects. There's no consequences. To me, I do get a little charged or a little triggered by that, because I personally would like to believe that there is more of a karmic wheel we're on for our ultimate, divine path towards going back to single source. However, who knows? I'm open to any type of theory on this, because I'm still just crawling in the dark as well. So
yeah, when we talk about afterlife stuff, I mean, who really knows for sure? I wouldn't say I subscribe to any particular view, but I've been kicking around the idea not of a no consequence system, but of an actual like redemption story, in the sense that, the hero's journey, any good version of the hero's journey, there has to be a redemption of the darkness in some way, the darkness in the hero or of the villain or both. Like, that makes it a good story. And it seems to reflect across all of our lives that we're just looking for those moments of like redeeming ourselves in some way through leveling up our behavior, our perspective, our ability to care about others. So how do we get clear whenever we have some sort of like emotional turmoil or big karmic repetition going on in our life? We get clear by facing the emotion, facing the root of the issue, feeling it. The way out is through. So I wouldn't be surprised if there is a type of post-life redemption where even a Bill Gates, goes through and encounters all the ways he's made other people feel, all the fear he spread through the realm in the form of like, entities coming to his awareness in a rapid fire way where he has a sort of life review. And you could consider that to be like a hell, and it would last as long as the person would be resistant to going through, or the soul or the spirit. But I would rather conceptualize, and so this is preference, a universe where even a guy like that, when he gets a reset, if you will, through having the because that's the only way to get the heavier negative karma clear, is to face it. Like, consciousness is the light that shines on the darkness and clears it. So that means you have to become aware of it and you have to feel it. So I think that I don't like the idea basically that there is a next life karmic retribution for what you did. I'd rather that it kind of all got wrapped up and dealt with in the astral plane, however long that takes, in a place where time isn't really the same anyway. Because otherwise you're able to use that belief to say that, like, you peasants out there deserve your fate. And that doesn't work for me.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I totally see that. In fact, we were going to have a friend of Dr. Lando on Alfa Cast, who I'm blanking on his name right now, bummer, who was basically a hitman. And he's written a book about this. I think they've even made a movie maybe about it, but where he has a near-death experience. He does the life review, sees how his actions in that life were so terrible and against, cosmic law and, the moral code and all that. And he actually has a chance to come back. What is his name? And he comes back to tell the story and writes the book on it and everything, and has now totally changed.
That's what I'm talking about. He went to the astral and got his little redemption moment,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And I agree that, for me, it's always then, why are there poor, starving kids in Africa? And so what the response, if you don't go on the karmic, the karmic side, the response is, well, they chose that. They chose that specific existence on this more physical, dense plane to have that, to go through that challenge.
Yeah, let's just say like the light aspect of what our soul grows through doesn't get reset or lost or made clear. Just the illusory densities are cleared by the light of consciousness and source when we're in the astral. So a difficult life, we could reframe a difficult life situation as being a more advanced and an older soul coming in to experience something that requires even more compassion to level up even more, as opposed to being punished for their misdeeds prior. I like that better.
I agree a lot with that. I really do. And it makes a lot of sense. Have you done any astral projection?
Oh, a little bit here and there.
Yeah. It's a trippy plane. I mean, I used to be more into it. I want to get back into it again.
Mine was more like what you call shamanic journeying, but in that technique or style. But yeah, I've got experiences there.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to be introduced to this stuff when I was very young from my father, who was getting a master's in psychology and had some interrelations with some professors who were literally going astral traveling with their students at night. And pretty trippy stuff. At UCLA, one of the professors there would actually do that with the students, and they were having like a little, I guess it was a club, like a parapsychology club, and they were experimenting with stuff from Bob, the original guy, blanking on his name too right now, Bob. It'll come to me in a second. He was like one of the initial early innovators of astral projection in the United States. And they have a whole, place you can go and learn his techniques and everything. I've talked about a bunch on Alfa Cast, but basically with these techniques, you can initiate astral projection. And this guy, this professor, even one of his students was in a really gnarly motorcycle accident and was going to lose his ability to walk, or at least one of his legs. And the professor went into the hospital room and I guess went astral projected into the body, found where a lot of the damage was able to essentially reconfigure some of the torn tendons and things and help him heal so that he could walk again. So these are the types of powers we have and the type of spirit science we need to move towards, and what I love talking about. So in terms of getting out, even I got caught in a trap there, Chance, talking about the karmic loop and getting stuck in the materialism of it and forgetting how powerful the astral realm is and the afterlife and everything that can happen there versus the lessons we just need to learn here. So yeah, I'm in total agreement with you on your perspective there. And I think that makes a lot of sense. I do still, and you brought up an interesting idea, the idea of an old soul. And I wonder about that because Casey traditionally said in the 20th century that a lot of the chaos and also a lot of the genius that was happening then, if you looked in the 1900s and even the late 1800s, was due to that there was a great majority of the reincarnations were coming from Atlantis. And the Atlantis mindset was very ingrained in a lot of duplexity. It's not like, the Atlantis mindset is very interesting because you had, I guess, two divergent factions. You had the Law of One, or the Sons of the Law of One, who were more tapped into source and the original incarnations from spirit. And then you had those who were more, quote unquote, fallen towards materiality, or the Sons of Baal. I always say the name right, Baal, right? Which turns into Baal, and that whole, where we are now.
They've been balling for a long time.
They've been balling. And so it's interesting because those have reincarnated in the 20th century, and there's the notion of eugenics was really big in Atlantis time, and a lot of this more supposedly nuclear power and all these things that they had during Atlantis time, which I still wonder about personally if that's even real. But that being said, these were quote unquote like old souls. But now fast forward to now, I think our generation, I'm a Gen X, I think Gen X and maybe millennials are the last of those Atlantean reincarnations. And now we're moving into a new epoch that's really exciting because I think we're actually having new young souls. And I don't know where they're coming from, but there's been some research and stuff done with some friends of mine, like Dr. Edith Ubuntu Chan, who's talking about like these kids that are coming in now, these children. These are fresh souls that have never incarnated in this realm before. And they're coming here now to bring us into the new epoch. And to me, that's like really crazy, exciting stuff and very interesting.
Yeah, just think about how powerful sprouts are versus letting the whole plant grow in terms of what they do for you nutritionally.
No, totally. Yeah. So I don't know if anyone's familiar with Dr. Edith Ubuntu Chan. You should have her on InnerVerse, dude. She is a fascinating person. She's a classic Chinese, medicine practitioner. But
I don't want to talk to her just for that reason alone.
Yeah, but she's gone deep. So she did a 5-day darkroom retreat with Jazz Muheen back in early 2000 teens in Thailand. I don't know if you're familiar with Jazz Muheen. She's a pretty well-known international breatharian. But in this 5-day dark room experience where it's just pure pitch black, it's a sensory deprivation experience, basically. She started tripping out. Once she finally was able to get into it, and like day 2, she got all this crazy energy and couldn't sleep and was just basically having a total psychedelic experience. And she had never planned to have kids. And that's when she first got her first messages from her future child, who was coming to her from space, basically, she says, or the cosmos, that he was going to come to her and she was going to birth him. And he was a new soul of all this group of kids that were coming, these new spirits, these new souls coming to essentially initiate us into the new epoch, that Steiner, Rudolf Steiner talks about happening right about now. And a lot of these mystics talk about, and we of course have the classic age of Aquarius and all these ideas. So very interesting story. And I wanted to start researching this more, or at least engaging with more people talking about this, because I kind of see it in my own. I do see it in my own kids. I have a 10-year-old and 8-year-old boys, and they are very unique. They are like this spark of consciousness that is not me at all. It's hard to explain. They are that sprout of new thinking, and they don't play in fear. Like, they laugh at war. They think it's stupid and they just play with it and they engage with it. And it's funny, actually, my youngest believes he was a reincarnated soldier, or he was in World War I, and he knows where he was shot and he has a scar from it. So he's very much actually super obsessed with World War I and the Civil War too. But they are coming. So maybe they are, I don't know, maybe they are an older soul, but they seem to be different. And so I wonder, how do we have an old soul with that statement, old soul? How do we even have an old soul if we're all from one? And where do these new souls coming from? I don't know. Just really trippy, interesting ideas.
Yeah, this entire realm of the afterlife conception is extremely murky. And so I never want to just drop like an absolute and be like, this is how it is, because who really knows? That's fun to speculate on, and especially with the right person or people. And one of the people that you recently got into some afterlife talk with on Alpha Vedic was the David Icke guy. Sorry, loud motorcycle neighbor. Classic. I don't know if you could hear that, but
barely.
Okay, good. Sweet. It wasn't so loud. Didn't even need to mention it. But hey, tell me more about what David Icke had to say on this subject. What maybe jives with what we're seeing, what maybe conflicts, because the last time I checked in with him, he was kind of on the team of like, don't go into the light. Reincarnation is a trap, but I don't know if that's really what his messaging was when you guys talked to him.
Yeah, David's interesting. And I think he would be the first to agree that there is no objective truth that we can really know in terms of what this reality is. I think it's all consciousness. It's all what we want it to be in a way. I think he would agree.
That's what I like about him.
Yeah, I think he would agree with what Bear and I say, because we're huge fans of Walter Russell. And Walter Russell was a very interesting, like, mystic scientist, a luminary from the early 20th century, who most people don't know about, but was like what Nikola Tesla said, supposedly, that, you are so ahead of the game that it'll take, 500 or 1,000 years for us to catch up to what you're talking about. But basically, this idea that we do live in a mental construct, this whole reality is just a mental contract from the universal one, the universal source. And so it's very it's very agile, right? It's like you can shape into whatever. So there is no objective truth in a way. But we're not talking about just pure, what's the word, solipsism, or what's the word where, like, you just create your own reality. What's that?
Solipsism?
It's like the idea that you live in your own bubble of reality that's different from your neighbor.
You decide what truth is for yourself, regardless of what the outside world or consensus reality presents to you. That would be solipsistic thinking.
Yeah, yes, exactly. And basically, I think it's both. It's like, you, of course, are the master of your own reality, but also we're all in this together, right? We all create this realm together. And it's very plastic. It can be shaped and changed however the group cosmic consciousness wants it to be. So I would think David would agree with that. But and that's this notion that we live in a prison planet. I think he understands that we opt in for that because we choose to imprison ourselves. Most of the time, if you think about it, that's what illness is. That's what a lot of our suffering is like, we're doing it to ourselves, right? Through moral depravity or through just the decisions we make. We make these decisions in our lives. We give our power away. We let those who are supposedly the experts demean us and tell us what reality is. And
a quick story. I had a friend that had a dream with David Icke in it. And there was a horse next to an electric fence, and the fence had been torn down, but the horse was like trained to not go past that spot. And David Icke was saying to my friend in the dream, that horse, that's humanity. Our limitations are only our beliefs, or whatever.
Good one. Good accent.
Yeah, it's a good metaphor for it, though. That is kind of where we're at. We've been
I think David's spot on. As I mentioned, I think I mentioned it either in the event interview I did with him, which was really funny because he went mute for we couldn't hear him for 4 minutes. We were waving. I don't know if you saw that one, but it was really funny. He was very instrumental in my initial awakening in the late 90s, early 2000s. The Biggest Secret kind of blew my mind because I was definitely going into the esoteric back then, and, I'd go into the metaphysical section in Borders books during my lunch breaks and reading whatever I could. And a lot of it was like this dark occult stuff, but also some really spiritual new agey stuff, of course, and just the whole gamut, right? And then his book kind of popped out of the bookshelf and fell on my foot. I never heard of him. This was in, I think, 2000, right after I graduated college. I was working at Nordstrom selling women's shoes. And, on my half-hour lunch break, I'd run to Borders to read whatever I could. I was obsessed with this stuff. And so that reading that book, I became obsessed with David Icke and the idea of the reptilians and all that, because that was relatively new to me. And it made a lot of sense. So I think David has been a pioneer, and he's taken a lot of shots. And of course, in our scene, people are quick to throw the controlled op, title to anybody these days. And I
definitely don't think that about David.
Yeah, I don't either. I also believe, though, that he's old school now, and he's got his brand, and of course he wants to manage that and maintain that. And I get that. But he took some big risks coming out, talking about reptilians and that whole paradigm. And he stuck to it, and he got laughed at on public television. And Dr. Barre Lando was doing these really interesting freedom sovereignty events in the mid to late 90s out in the Caribbean, and they had David speaking at those way back then, along with Ron Paul and Edward Griffin and people like that. So he's been in the game a long time, and I really respect him. But I do think he's human, and he's always, he's figuring stuff out too as we go. And I would say in the afterlife, this idea of a prison planet, we imprison ourselves. This idea that the moon is somehow this artificial construct that traps us into an incarnation recycling on a prison planet. I personally think that's just a narrative, a mythology that we create to basically provide substance to our own imprisonment, or, in part
An
of the fear
excuse for
matrix.
our lack of success, for
Yeah.
our fear of our own success, the fear of what it would look like to be responsible on a much wider and vaster level for this life fractal. Because when we realize it's all consciousness, and that is a big, scary leap of conception to go from I'm only just this one little person in the world that's happening to me, and I have no real say over it, to learning that, wow, everything within me is also reflected outside of me. And thus I could actually completely steer and drive the direction the world goes based on my belief and my choices. That's too much power. That's too much responsibility. I need everything to actually be back the other way where I'm being controlled, because otherwise, what if I screw up? What if I take the world into a bad direction? It's subconsciously a big fear of our own power.
Yeah, moving out of victim consciousness, I think, is the most important thing that people should be focused on right now. I really do. And doing the shadow work and stuff like that, because that is where we fall short on all aspects of our lives, including like prosperity, right? Including like our ability to have whatever we want in our lives. We've been entrained to that selfish, or that's not fair to those who don't have the lack consciousness that's been ingrained, especially in the millennial generations and in the pop culture, right? With socialization of things and statism. So it's all victim consciousness, and it's doing the inner work. It's all that is extremely important, but also going back to this idea that we're in a prison planet. That plays perfectly into the whole psi notion that we have no control over things, when there's been hard science that's shown opposite of that. Dean Radin, if you're familiar with him, with the IONS, the Institute of Noetic Sciences, they've literally done psi experiments for decades now, showing that our mind can control and shape materiality, and even the past, which is trippy. We just did a really interesting show on how our minds affect the past, and really what this reality is in terms of the past. And it gets quite profound when we start to realize that even time is related to our consciousness and who we are. And you're right, there's like an extremely I guess for me, uplifting notion of that it's all on me. But I think for a lot of people that haven't done the work, that are just waking up to this, that can be very terrifying.
Yeah, dude. Like, I think maybe with the time and the past deal, that what we are looking for is what we find. My dad's a professional treasure hunter, and he finds things that way, like intuitively. He thinks maybe he'll find some Civil War relics in this place that wasn't necessarily on the history books in terms of troop movements or encampments. And he'll find stuff where he believes he's going to find it. And that's a small anecdotal example, but I really think maybe the idea of healing our ancestral timelines that is constantly bandied about with energy healers and that type of thing could very well be healing our perspective on who we think our ancestors are. And really the only warfare that exists in the world is worldview warfare, because that's what allows the world to be shaped into the semblance of a prison planet, the semblance of external controllers or parasites or middlemen having power over us. And so believing our ancestors were savage and they lived in the dark ages and everything was war and death and pestilence and famine, and it's their fault because they were so uninvolved and evil or stupid, that affects who we think we are majorly. There's a feedback loop between past, present, and future, but the only one that actually exists is present. The past is just as in flux as the future in some ways. Our ancestors are in the future in a weird paradoxical sense if we collapse that and really balance the middle point between these poles of past and future. But
oh wow, I love that. Our ancestors are a projection of who we're going to be in the future in a weird way. And I've been talking about this.
Exactly. That makes sense, right? Yeah.
This redactive editing of quote unquote history is real. And we talk about it, in terms of the, what's it called, effect. I'm having a big brain fart there. Yeah, Mandela or Mandala, right? Mandela. very similar right there. Very interesting. It is all fractal, but yeah, we are essentially editing our reality, past, present, and future, and every nanosecond, collectively and individually. And that all relates back to the mind construct of what this reality is. And so, yeah, that's really interesting that who we project us to be also changes the past. And that can explain a lot with this whole theory of Tartaria, the mud floods, all this stuff, which I don't totally buy a lot
Why
of.
that's evolving so fast and so much is happening so quickly.
Yeah.
That area of research.
It's wild. And so it's a self-fulfilling prophecy and also I think because of the internet, I've been talking about this a lot, because really for me, time is memory. Like, especially because we live in, this is a human consciousness experience realm, right? Like, that's how we relate to it. That's, just to simplify things. So how do we relate to history? It's what we remember, what has been written down. But most history is, we know is written by the winners, by their memory of it, or at least their their editing of it. And so, but I also believe that if what we choose to remember, what our memories will be, will start to shape that, as you're mentioning with what your dad is doing, which is really interesting. So, yeah, these are really, I love these topics because I think it really opens up, once again, to the power of that we are the divine creators of our reality. And it's really where we put our attention is what matters most. So we need to be really conscious of where we put our attention, because with every thought, that is an initiation of an electrical stimulus into this reality. And so when you and I right now are collecting these thoughts together and creating this show, we are literally creating reality right now. I mean, it's very obvious, right? But what does that really mean for us, and how can we harness that to our benefit? I think that's why I get really excited about where we're going, because not only the Dean Radins and the more academic people who are understanding this, that we redactively change reality, or that we have precognition and all these things, and the parapsychology, research. But beyond that, what we're just doing on these podcasts, and because of the internet, with the Tartaria research, for instance, or flat Earth and all this stuff, is that because we're more connected now, thanks to the internet, I believe that's the early stages of us psychically getting reconnected, and then being able to essentially do what I think they were doing in the second epoch, or first epoch of Atlantis, where they were using these mind technologies to shape the realm and not physical technologies. And that's why, I think we don't see a lot of the remnants of their technology, because I don't think we understand what their technology was. But two, also, I think they were acting on whole different planes of existence that weren't even in this physical realm. And I think that's where we're headed to. And there may be this idea that those who are super aligned with the physical materialism will continue in this materialistic realm that could turn into some kind of hellscape for a while that they choose to go in. And those who are moving forward and choosing through by, opting in, right? Because we do have the ability to do that. Everything is based on what we decide. We are moving towards a more etheric reality, and away from what Steiner would call the eighth sphere, which is the AI-driven metaverse that seems to be very trendy right now from the scientism side. So, yeah, very exciting times. And for me personally, something I'm very passionate about is economics and value systems and what some would, I don't like to say the crypto word, because that seems to really trigger people. And for me personally, I think mainstream quote unquote crypto has been completely taken over. But that doesn't mean that there's not some very interesting things that can be done with reimagining how we base value around what money is, or how we relate to exchanging value. And that's really just exchanging energy. And there's some really exciting things that I've been working on, and that friends of mine have been working on, that I think will really help us move towards that more etheric reality where I see us moving to.
Beautiful, man. Yeah, you're talking about your Qortal project, which I'd hope to maybe get into more in the first hour, but I want to let people know that you appeared on the Higher Side Chats back in October when it was a newer launch, and gave a really great breakdown in the first hour about that, dirty word crypto, but that.
Well, that was the first time Greg had anyone come on to really talk about it, because so many people in our quote unquote truther realm or whatever, see so many issues with it as a controlled thing, like Catherine Austin Fitz talks about and such. But Qortal and what we're doing, I think, is very different and unique because it is so decentralized. It doesn't play in any of the traditional fiat-based centralized exchange realm and all that stuff. But yeah, go listen to that one. I've also done some pretty good interviews with like Sayer G from Green Med Info, who's been a big backer of Qortal. And I do want to do more like metaphysical breakdowns of what cryptocurrency, blockchain technology is, because I think it is connecting us to the Akashic in an interesting way.
Well, that's great. That actually feeds right into some of the Akashic concepts I want to talk about in the second hour. And in the last 5 minutes, not of the first hour, no rush. You don't have to necessarily try to compact it all into 5 minutes. If we go a little over, no big deal. But let's tell people where they can find the stuff you're doing, sure. Some of the things coming up this year that they could get involved in the real world, not on screens. We'll touch on music and sky right here, but I have so much more I want to talk about with that because I'm so interested in going, and that's huge to my personal backstory, the music, like Transformational Arts Festival. So tell them all the things that you can about how to get in touch with what you're doing and stay abreast and be connected and do the stuff.
Yeah. So I've actually been really excited about, as you said, working in the real world and not so much on a screen. So I've been doing less and less podcasts and just really focusing on community. We've got it a wonderful with Alfa Vedic, alfavedic.com. We are actually about to launch our fully private membership. That's all done in the private. We've through trusts and this whole really amazing lawful setup that you'll be able to join. And then with that, we have meetups and workshops on the farm and stuff. So alfavedic.com, and of course Alfa Cast is the podcast I do with that. I'm also with Qortal, Qortal.org, Qortal.org. We're rebuilding the internet. That's a big claim. So check that out. And that's all about digital sovereignty, but we also relate that to the physical because on there we have like a decentralized Telegram, decentralized groups. People are meeting in the real world based off of what their interactions are on Qortal. And of course the currency and we're working with other folks like Jim Gale, who's the food forest guy. I don't know if you've had Jim on the show, but
he was so inspirational, man.
Okay, so he's developing a new coin called Topia that'll be interfacing with Qortal. That is all food-based backed, stable coin based on the yields out of the food forests, stuff like that. Developing that with him. Still developing Karmic, which we can talk about in the second hour, which is an experience-based crypto. It's all based on exchange of experience, which gets really trippy. And then, of course, Music and Sky is a health and freedom sovereignty festival. It's an art festival. It was grounded as like burners who weren't into the neoliberalism, leftist ideology that took over Burning Man, and also people who are never been to Burning Man that were just looking for an outlet during the pandemic to meet up. So we've done 2 years of it. Our third will be fall equinox. We just announced a smaller event, Memorial Day weekend. East of Ojai, California, in this beautiful location. That'll be a 3-day retreat as a fundraiser for the larger festival. The festival is extremely family friendly. It's very cutting edge in terms of what we do there, from survival workshops to ice baths is like a major focus. It's like our central kind of theme. Everybody gets in the ice bath pretty much. And so it's all about, facing our shadow, but also and healing, but also like really cutting edge workshops, talks. We have a 24-hour art gallery in the middle of it. That is a huge focus. We believe art and culture and entertainment needs to be grounded in sovereignty because that's how movements form. It's formed through the art and through, those aspects. If you look at the 60s, right, even a lot of that was controlled by Tavistock and stuff. It's the art, it's the music, it's the fashion, it's the culture ingrained with the ideology that really drives the movement. So that's what Music and Sky is all about. And it really is family. We're trying to make it like the Disneyland. I hate that analogy, but like super family focused festival. We don't have an
so the anti-Disneyland.
Anti-Disneyland. Thing like you bring the family. It's all curated. it's an experience that is unlike any other festival. I've been to them all. I've DJ'd at them, like the Lucidities, Lightning in a Bottle. I was at the original Lightning in a Bottle. That was because I lived in Santa Barbara. And of course, all the offshoot based festivals and all those things. This is different. We have bands, we have DJs, we have all that stuff, but it's all like my set last year at Music and Sky on 4th of July was just a freedom uplifting house music set that was badass. It was all freedom derived songs and like everything's curated. So I hope you guys can check out musicandsky.com. It is probably the thing I'm most passionate about because I come from 20 years DJing and events, which we can talk about in the second hour. My favorite thing to do in the world, Chance, is DJing, playing to a dance floor. It is the thing I get off on the most. And of course, working in the garden.
My favorite things is being on that dance floor. So I get it.
Yeah, man. Like I'm 20 years DJing, dude, in the underground, more than that now with all the greats. So, I'm more of a house music guy, but I could go everywhere. I love like a lot of global beats, keeping it live, dropping in like the Police and stuff, like keeping it very unique and different, and got really into ecstatic dance of late and doing those kind of sets. So that is what drives a lot of my passion with doing events is having that experience on the dance floor where and now it's great. We have kids on the dance floor with their parents, and then we've got like burner types all dressed up. And then we've got people that have never been to an event like this that are like from the anarchy, side of things. And we all come together based around one ideal, which is just independent freedom of thought, free thinkers. This is where free thinkers come to express themselves, which was what Burning Man was supposed to be.
Well, that's what it was advertised as. And get into the history of how it was created. You go, oh, there's definitely some secret society involvement here. But
exactly.
But a lot of the people that would go to the burns had a different idea of what they thought that they were partaking in and what their intentions for it was. So it's not like it was all darkness. It was obviously it's a spectrum. But what you guys are creating is what the world needs most. And we need more events like that. It's something I aspire to do in my future when the resources and time and experience line up well for me, and the connections, most importantly, the serendipitous connections to other people who can make it happen. And I don't think it's far off, but okay. So before we go,
you're gonna be at the next one. I'm going to make it happen.
Oh, I'm going to be there. I was like, I want to be there earlier in this talk, but now I'm like, no, I've decided. It is my full belief and knowing that I will be there. So looking forward to that so much. One of the great things about those events, I'm kind of rambling now, but is like the anticipation of something like that in your near future can like pull you through all kinds of muck that you need to deal with because you've always got that like excitement building up.
Dude, you're giving me that excitement right now.
Yeah. But okay, before we go for the first hour, can you just like maybe give people off the top of your head, first one that comes to mind, a great episode of Alfa Cast to check out after this?
I would go check out the Kelly Brogan one we just did with Kelly Brogan, MD, if you're familiar with her. She goes deep into personal responsibility and victim consciousness, and it is so inspiring. I think it's one of the most important talks right now to really listen to, because this idea of us even being a savior of others plays right into victim consciousness. So it goes into like what sovereignty is and what it really means to be a sovereign, soul. And she just breaks it down in a brilliant way. I'm just blown away by her. She's become a dear friend of mine, and she'll be at Music and Sky because she loves to dance. So that'll be fun.
All right. Well, people, check out alfavedic.com for all the things. There's so much there that we couldn't have even possibly touched on in the first hour. We'll see everyone else that's subscribing on the Patreon and Rockfin on the other side for continuation of this chat with Mike Winner, where we're definitely going to talk more about the magic of festivals and Music and Sky. We're going to get into this idea of the Akashic and privacy and technology and crypto and our spiritual capacities that are reflected by these technologies. There's so much to do. So we'll see you guys on the other side. Mike, thanks for joining me today. It's been an honor, my friend.
Amazing. And I know Dr. Bear is going to come on too. I'm telling you, he's got to go on. You got to go on InnerVerse. So he is, we'll line him up because he will blow minds.
Oh, I cannot wait. Thank you. Okay, we'll see you on the other side. Thanks, people. What an awesome conversation. I've been wanting to talk to Mike for ages. We did have him on a Vibrant for a brief time, and, we shoot things to each other online here and there, but the full 2-hour chat was everything I hoped for and more. Definitely unlocked some things for future conversation topics and future guest directions. Checked a few subjects off the list that I wanted to at least broach and explore on InnerVerse at some point, which we probably need to go into deeper. But first, let's just go ahead and get it out of the way. I got to let everybody know what was in the Plus extension. If you're listening to this show and don't have access to the extended content, well, it's really easy to get. Patreon.com/InnerVerse or Rockfin, ROKFIN.com/InnerVerse. Check the links in the show notes for a link directly to the extended version of this episode on either of those platforms. Because if you support me with a mere $5 a month on Patreon or join the Rockfin network to get access to all of the creators' premium content there, you will be able to tap into the second hour of this conversation and every other extended conversation I do here. So it's worth it. You support me help you, and really appreciate you guys that are already doing it. Shout out to Augie, who just joined the $12 tier on Patreon for a year. Much appreciated there, brother. If you're hearing this, thank you so much. So if you do tap into hour 2 for this chat with Mike, winner of Alpha Vedic, you're going to hear more about the how and why of the Music and Sky Festival, 90s rave culture and following synchronicity, slowing technology down and embracing our spiritual capacities to communicate, and more, the consciousness lessons from cannabis, sometimes some hard lessons too, and Mike's Qortal Project and consciousness enhancing currency technology, the possibility of the illusion of privacy and true sovereignty, how those two things interplay. And of course, I had to go here because we haven't talked about it before. And I know it's potentially rough, or maybe you're way ahead of me and you're already doing it. I don't know. But we did talk about Shavambu, which is the name for urine therapy, aka drinking urine, which would be a difficult thing to believe it was good for me if all the other aspects of life that I was taught to be good didn't end up being bad, and vice versa. Seems like whatever they taught you in school, maybe you just need to invert it and flip it upside down for it to be closer to the truth. And urine therapy does seem like possibly one of those things. We also got into ancestors who potentially did not need to eat or maybe even sleep, and upgrading the animal kingdom by healing our consciousness and connection to life. As in, if we evolve and change the way that we interact with life and maybe quit predating, perhaps the animal kingdom would follow suit. Who knows? But we're looking forward to talking to Mike again, maybe doing a full-on Vibrant live stream episode with him about the Qortal Project and the spiritual maybe upsides and possible downsides of crypto as a technological solution to where we're currently at in the world. I'm definitely open to that. I mean, I've talked in the past about crypto bad, and why, danger, but it's a nuanced subject. I recognize that. I'm willing to go to a lot of different directions with it and explore a lot of different possibilities, because I don't think technology is going to go away. I don't think it's inherently evil. I think that it all boils down to our spiritual connection, to our ability to be in alignment with the way nature works. But what if the way nature works is also something that is in alignment with the way that we are operating? That's a bigger question, because we do talk all the time about getting into harmony with nature, following nature's law, natural law, all that. But what if it's a two-way conversation? What if the way that nature expresses itself is also a product or in some way influenced by our level of consciousness and our behavior? I think it's obvious that that is the case, because look at how life forms adapt on a basic materialistic reductionist evolutionary level to changes in their environment that are caused by humans. So what if there was a big change in the psychic environment? What would happen to the way that animals interact at that point? Are they really all archetypes of aspects of human consciousness or the divine supreme being that are expressing themselves in a way for us to learn that we have whatever those qualities of that archetype are within ourselves. And if that's the case, I really do think that we are in a conversation with archetypes at all times, and that our perspective on the archetypes and on life changes the archetypes as much as their communication to us changes us. I don't think it's a one-way street. I think it's balance. It goes both ways. So, and man, I could reflect on most of the things that we talked about in this conversation. Was really interesting to get into the conversation of like reincarnation and karma resets. Also appreciate the possibility that maybe on the nutritional level, a minimalist approach is okay if what we're taking in is really good and we've evolved and healed our body and detoxed it enough. Detoxing being the most important thing probably to getting us back into a healthier rhythm with life and nature. I wanted to talk more about the event, which was an online summit that they held where they talked to all kinds of creators. We kind of tangentially gotten around it. Also wanted to ask him about besovereign.com. I don't know his involvement with that website, but it appears to be an alternative video hosting platform that I'd really like to get InnerVerse on. So I'm going to have to ask him about that privately. I'll let you know if I do get on there and add yet another place where you can check out the podcast besides the GooTube and the other Gulag-owned platforms. I was really happy to finally talk about music festivals with Mike, though. That was a big part of the Plus extension. I'm a festy kid by nature. I dressed in my festy best for this conversation, as you can see. They really changed my life and opened me up to the possibilities of living from the passion of our creativity and from our spiritual direction rather than our matrix identity, if all that makes sense. So other conversations I would have loved to talk about with him. I'm really excited that we'll be able to get Dr. Barre Lando on. Is that first of all, the idea of holographic blood. I think that he's maybe interviewed some people about that. Mike has. But this is the idea that in our blood, there are structures, if you will, that are holographic representations of what's going on with our organs and our health overall. That just taking a little microscopic sliver of blood and looking at it for the patterns can help us see what's going on in our body for good or ill. It makes perfect sense. If life is a fractal and our life force energy is circulated and carried in the blood, then we should be able to just look at our blood and find out anything that we needed to know about the health of that particular body that the blood came from. But man, there's also other things that we could have discussed, like the tea of immortality that they sell there. I'm going to get into that more with Bear, I believe, possibly. And I know that Barre Lando also has got great Schauberger level knowledge on water and structured water, which Mike touched on just a little bit. And I really want to go kind of to the basic level, like how do you define structured water and what is its full potential? What is the 0 point technology you're talking about with the vitamins and the She Legit type supplement going on? I'm going to have to try out some of their stuff. I'll let you know what I think. I'm out of She Legit right now, so I'd like to try the Alpha Vedic version. The 0 point number 1 full spectrum is what it's listed as on the website, which has got the platinum group transitional elements, fulvic-based delivery system, 1 a day convenience, vitamins, minerals, amino acids, and vital elements. Increasing cell hydration, regeneration, and communication. All very amazing. So that sounds great. I've already used She Legit to great effect. And if this is a more new and improved version of it, then sign me up. I want to try it out. And another thing I haven't brought up in an outro for a while is the hydrogen, George Wiseman's Brown's gas machine, which we had George on earlier in the year. And I think 4 or 5 people from the InnerVerse community have purchased a Brown's gas machine, and I only know of one of them. So I'd really like to know other people's experience with it, how it went for them. Because we talked about it with Lindsay Sharman on Vibrant last week, just touched on it a little bit. She mentioned how much more she was able to do and how much healthier she felt after doing the Brown's gas, inhaling that hydrogenated gas. And it's something I intend to get for myself when I'm able to. And maybe I should make that a priority and do it sooner than later because it seems so helpful. And it makes a lot of sense. Hydrogen is the number 1 element on the periodic table. But I bring it up just because if you haven't heard that episode with George Wiseman on InnerVerse, go check it out. Really inspirational story, very much a heart-moving kind of heart-wrenching story about the call from the divine that George received that was impossible to ignore, to spread the word about this particular brand of healing, this nutritional supplement, if you will, that is hydrogen. It doesn't get more minimal than hydrogen. It's the number one element on the periodic table. One proton, one electron, one neutron, if you believe in those sorts of things. So yeah, check out the link in the show notes too if you are interested in getting an AquaCure machine, because you get a discount if you use my code. This is the very bottom of the list of all the many ways you can support the podcast that's linked in every description of every show. So what else is there? Other ways to support. You can get some great nutritional supplements from Clive DeCarl. Very worthwhile. Even if you're going minimal, vitamin C is never a bad thing to add to your toolkit. In fact, vitamin C and magnesium, if you're doing nothing else, probably those two would be the most important foundational nutritional supplements to make sure you're getting into your body and having healthy levels of. So check out the link to Clive DeCarl's shop. He's got such great stuff there, really high quality. And we do get a kickback. And by we, I mean me, because I do this show alone, other than the different guests each week. But it's all me over here. And I do appreciate your support. You can also get a copy of Spirit World, July's End, the occult audiobook that I narrated for Dylan Sicosio. Very much recommend getting into that and diving into the syncretism gravy contained within that work. Really good stuff. And of course, a way to support the show and support yourself is to sign up for Oracle card readings with me. I just did what I thought was a really good one for the group on 315. So if you didn't catch that, maybe go back. We got into the concept of grace. I kind of touched on it in this conversation because the learning from that presentation really rippled and echoed into my day to day, and it makes a lot of sense. So there's always more insights with the I Ching with every hexagram. And I'd love to do one-on-one sessions using I Ching and tarot for you out there. If you would like a little spiritual guidance where you tap in and get some insight from higher self you and higher self me and see what resonates and what helps your life change because of that. And I know that some people have really let me know that there have been big, helpful life changes and shifts from the insights into their own inner world and intuition they can come about from those oracle card sessions. I believe they're very powerful. I've witnessed a lot of them at this point. Also, you can hit me up for sound healing, aura repair, technician, whatever you want to call it, chakra balancing that I use tuning forks to do. Amazing process there as well. My website has got a page all about it. If you need more information, that'll be linked in the show notes too. But an hour-long session can really help you out. You have no idea what it could feel like to have your chakras fully balanced and charged up and activated. One of my most recent clients actually hit me up with a message on Telegram the day after the session. And he was like, my clarity is higher than ever. I feel like I'm in a meditative state all the time, where he said something like his meditation was really good that day. And my spine feels like a didgeridoo is what he said. And I laughed because I was on my way to go catch a musical show with an artist who played a didgeridoo a lot. So I was like, yeah, didgeridoo it, everybody. Get yourself a sound healing session with me. Hit me up, chance@innerversepodcast.com. And that artist I mentioned who plays didgeridoo goes by Lucid. I play his music on the show all the time. He's been on Vibrant, been on InnerVerse longer ago. I saw him over the weekend and he was amazing as always. So I decided, why not play one of his newer tracks for the outro here? Can never really play enough of his tunes. I love him so much. So stick around for the outro. I'm playing this song called Last March by Lucid. If you're watching the video version of the show, you can catch the visualizer, which I haven't made yet, but I bet it's going to be awesome for this episode, like I do every time. And I think I'm ready to sign off. Get ready for another big Vibrant tonight. I'm recording this on a Wednesday. Lots of stuff going on in the InnerVerse world. It's just getting bigger and faster and better all the time. Your support matters a lot to me. Thank you so much. Join our Telegram group if you're not already one of the almost 500 people there. Amazing connections going on every day with geniuses who have all kinds of knowledge, expertise, sharing what they know with each other practically all day, every day. Jump in, get in the mix. Thanks for being here. I love you guys. Definitely check out Alpha Vedic and the Alfa Cast and Mike Winter and Dr. Barre Lando. They are pioneers in the field of the new the real new and improved human being, as in going back to our natural state of, I guess, oneness, recognition of the oneness of all life force energy without sacrificing our individuality and our sovereignty. Important balance to strike right there. So yeah, thanks, Mike. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Love y'all. Check out Lucid, linked in the show notes as well. Enjoy it. And I'll catch you on the next one. Strength and love, as Gabriel would say. Bye-bye.
Mm-hmm.